we are gonna get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Teresa Liao. I'm the content specialist, and here we're going to today we're talking about staying ahead of the shuffle. 5 keys to lab inventory tracking in ever-changing environments. I have here joining me Jack. Jack, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hey, I'm Jack Lynchus. I'm the Academic Partnerships Ambassador with Synode. So I've almost 3 years with Synode, working with different labs all across the world, and looking forward to talking about inventory management within ELN software today with you all.
Perfect. So to start the session, let me go on to the next slide. I do have to do an obligatory what's Sino about Sino. So Sino is a lab digitalization company, and with the mission to help humanity benefit the most from science and to preserve research data for future generation. So a lot of the things we deal with is data management, and that's where you see the topic on data management coming up a lot with our webinars. Sino's Electronic Lab Notebook, ELN, is a leading ELN with inventory, compliance, and team management tools. It's used by the FDA, USDA, and over 100K scientific professionals. Sino is currently in the FedRAMP authorization process, which is a U.S. federal program for cloud-based software, as part of our commitment to customer needs, and the trust they place in our product. All right, now I have done that. We're gonna start this webinar today with a poll. What tool or tools are you using to manage your inventory at the moment? Laura, sorry, I should also mention that Laura from Sino is the little box you see as a Sino team, and Laura is kind of like our background tech support, and she will be helping us with some assist everyone with technical needs. So Laura just launched the pool, and the options are you using pen and paper, spreadsheets, other cloud-based digital tools, inventory management software, maybe you're already using an ELN or other lab information management system, or maybe none of the above. If that's the case, I would really like to know what are you using. Please select all the options. You can select as many. You can select all of them, or you can, if you do a combination. If you do a combination, or if none of the options are, part of your kind of collection of tools that you use, feel free to mention what you use in the chat, because we'd like to learn more as well. How people kind of manage their data and then handle like inventory and data management. All right, we're gonna count a little. Everyone has a chance to fill that out. Sort of, because I actually don't get to vote. So you have the power to vote and decide on, well, share the inventory management tool you're using. So all right, so I'm hoping that we have most people fill out. And Laura, can we show the results? Perfect. So we have some pen and paper. Maybe, let me see, it could be pen and paper only, or it could be, it's part of the tool set. A lot of spreadsheets. I imagine Excel is most likely the default, but I also seen a lot of people using Google spreadsheets as well. There are some other cloud-based tools, OneDrive, Google Drive, OneNote, Google Drive, Notion. Other inventory management software, Corsi, ELN, hopefully ours, but it could also be other ELNs. And then in some cases, LIMS. So almost everyone has a way of managing using the tools that I just outlined. So that's really good to hear, because then that means everyone is thinking about inventory management and moving the right direction. So usually with webinars, I like to start with a little bit of a definition. So we go to our trusted source of Wikipedia. When it comes to inventory management, typically it's about specifying the shape and placement of stock goods. It's required at the different locations within a facility or within many locations of a supply network to precede the regular and planned course of production and stock of materials. You'll see that this definition is more oriented to production, but you can get a sense that typically when we talk about inventory management, the question that come up is, where is item A stored? It could be a plasmid, it could be antibodies, it could be samples, it could be even, in some cases like animals or other materials, seeds, plants. How much of the item do I have left? And this comes to, do I have enough for the next experiment? Do I need to order more materials? And that's the next question. And finally, if you are distributing materials, like if you are, of course, facility that distribute reagents, plasmids, cell lines, etc., then you have to think about, do I have enough to distribute? Sometimes it also could be you're sharing materials with a collaborator. Those are the questions usually come up in inventory management. Now, interestingly, there are a whole other set of questions that come up with these questions. So, for example, are there instructions comes with using a material, particular material or reagent? Are there MSDS or data sheets or QA documents filed? And where are they filed? What conditions has the material been stored under? Is it in minus 80 Celsius fridge, or is it in the regular refrigerator? Is it in the storage room, etc., etc.? If anything is moved, is it documented that the location has been moved? Is there any change in the condition it has been stored in? Then we have a bunch of questions related to experiments and protocols. So what experiments or protocols use this particular reagent or material? Who did the previous experiments? Who handled the material last? Which lot or subtype of a material? And then I'm thinking more about, like, it could be anything, but I'm thinking more about based on my experience previously as a bench scientist, even if it's just like a particular antibody of a particular antigen, is it monoclonal or polyclonal? Is it from a particular animal? Is it a specific lot of antibody that I purchased from? So that's information. Is that attached with the material or reagent? How was that protocol developed when that's helping you to handle the usage of this reagent? So is it vendor, collaborator, or maybe it's in describing a paper publication? When it comes to ordering material, sometimes there will be finance department or accounting material, accounting information that need to be associated with the material. So maybe you need to inform someone in the finance department, or maybe you need to use a specific account to pay for that material. Finally, how was the material prepared if you are distributing it out? How was it stored? And if you need more, how do you prepare more? So those tend to be the questions that come up. And interestingly, these are the questions that tend to become major issues in this, like our topic today is ever-changing environment, right? So when the change happens, it could be turnover, it could be maybe facility you're moving, it could be it could be someone getting to a new facility, or it could be contracting things out to a CRO. Anyways, these information tend to become an issue when it comes to traceability and reproducibility. And instead of, the other questions about location and ordering. So I like to call these questions more inventory data management, because these are the data that actually surround the inventory items, right? And if we start thinking about it that way, then really what we're talking about is how do we treat inventory management as part of your data management strategy to make sure we don't lose that critical information during any turnover, student leaving or staff members leaving, or changing process and all that. Like, how do we make sure those information is kept and is still there whenever those things happen? If we start talking about data management, then of course, then we need to bring up FAIR. And I hope everyone have a little bit of understanding of FAIR, but I want to include this slide from a little bit of an inventory data perspective. FAIR really means, making sure that scientific data is findable, accessible, interoperable, I also have a problem pronouncing that, interoperable and reusable. So key concept from inventory data management's perspective we'll come to, then we want to make sure that inventory metadata and data should be easy to find for both humans and computers. And this comes with like searchable, right? Know how inventory data can be accessed. So can you access it? If one of the person on your team leave, can you still access that information? Inventory data should be integrated with other data and interoperate with applications or workflows. So if you are doing a protocol or running an experiment, can you find the data related to the inventory items that you're using in your experiment and protocol? Finally, inventory metadata and data should be well described so that they can be reused. So imagine 3 years later, you might want to repeat something. And I actually heard a lot of this, during the time where facilities and schools and universities are shut down. Many PIs, was away from their lab and then come back 2 years later or 1 year later and go, hey, this protocol, I was running this experiment prior to, leaving the lab or leaving the university or whatnot. which student handled this, which staff member handled this, where is the protocol, where is the inventory item, which specifically inventory item was used, and that came up. And then so that kind of information should be well described so that you can go back and reuse that information to further your experiments or repeat the experiments. Those are the 4 key concepts when it comes to inventory data perspective. So then we're going to our key component of the webinar, 5 keys to inventory tracking in ever-changing environments. And I'm going to provide some examples in this process. Some examples we're using are using the Sino interface, but you can, in some cases, you can actually handle some of those, like, you'll potentially find similar functionalities elsewhere, or if you don't, sometimes there are ways to keep track of it still with Excel spreadsheet. So we want to keep it to big principles, but the examples we'll be using will be a little bit Sino related. I do want to mention one more thing, which I totally forgot to mention, is that I believe we will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So if you have any questions about anything I just described, any examples or any functionalities or any key points, feel free to either leave that in chat, or we have a Q&A box dedicated to that. So you can leave your question in the Q&A box. Jack and I will answer all the questions at the end of our webinar, so that we address all the questions. And there are also some questions submitted through our submission online form. All right, so 5 key things to inventory tracking in the ever-changing environment. Key number 1, keep inventory management digital and include all supplementary materials in digital forms. I was so close to capitalizing every single letter in that sentence because that's how important it is, because this is a bit like a foundation for everything, 2 to 5 that we're going to talk about, because with the scale of the information we're handling right now, if it's not digital, it's extremely difficult to find. We talk about the FAIR principles. If it's not digital, it's extremely difficult to find. And it can be somewhere in a box, that was far away as, pieces of paper that you'll never see again. So keeping inventory management digital, make sure that it allows you to refer to other materials like your protocols, like other notes very easily, like in results easily. If you do this in paper, then you are like, you need to mark box 1 in storage facility A, in a shelf number, whatever, and it becomes really difficult. My passage, I have like, for paper copies though, sometimes some materials, like for example, when you receive a reagent kit, or if you receive an antibody or something, it comes with a piece of paper, right? And I don't know if that's still the case these days, because back in the days, at least that's how I handle it, but it could be digital formats now. Make sure that you either take a photo of it, keeping a PDF, or scan it, keeping PDF, or whatever. Attach that with your inventory item. And that's the powerful thing about digital, is that you can, make sure those items are, those pieces of paper are in digital format, and then you can keep it together with your inventory item information. There's always possibility with OCR down the road where we can convert those images or PDF into text-based. The most important thing right now is to associate that information together with your inventory item in a digital format. Now, you can potentially also do this if you're a very small lab, 2 or 3 members, very limited inventories, if you use paper. But that, as soon as you scale up, that becomes extremely difficult. And that's why the key, number 1, if you don't do anything else, and I hope you do other things, but if you don't anything else, do your best to keep inventory management digital and include all supplementary materials in digital forms. Oops, sorry, jump ahead a bit. So number 2 is incorporate inventory information, protocols, notes, and more. And when it comes to it, be specific. So specific comes with in two ways. So when you record inventories, make sure to include as much information you can with that inventory. So the antibody example I just gave, I will usually talk about the subtype of antibody, lot information, supplementary materials, what's intended use, protocols, and whatever. So there could be other materials or reagent used. Try to include as much information you can with the item. That's the specific part. The second part about being specific is that when you refer to that particular inventory item, also be specific. You don't want to just say, I was using anti-GLP-1 antibody. That's not specific enough. The best is you can apply or assign a unique ID to this antibody, that you're using, right? And then you can refer to the specific unique ID instead of just saying it's an anti-GLP-1. Well, that's not sufficient enough. What are we going to use in order to find the original materials, right? And then so I'm gonna show a few examples of this. So this is an example that we see in an academic research lab where there is Kelly handles animal models, and so they at any given time there will be animals received from vendors. Now you can see that Kelly come up with a naming convention when it comes to handling each rat that she received, and they have rat and mouse, and there might be more models in the lab that they handle. So Kelly uses a naming convention to help her kind of track back which rat was used in one particular experiment. And every time that the animal is referred to, then okay, this is the specific one. I can trace back to the inventory information and know exactly when I received this rat, the date of birth for this rat, which project it is for, who added it, and it was added on which date. I included a QR code here, so if you're interested in Kelly's full use case, you can scan the QR code and get to that. We'll also include the links to all the use cases in your follow-up email, so you can read more thoroughly how Kelly handle inventory management and data management in general in the lab. So when it comes to, like I mentioned, doing the protocols and experiments, Kelly will refer to a particular lab. Sorry, this is not expanded, but if you actually click on this little triangle left to the lab rats, you actually expand and show which specific rat was used in this particular experiment. So that's how Kelly handle sort of like the traceability and making sure you can refer to which animal was used. We have another example, Marcus. Marcus set up each inventory management database based on inventory type and location. So reagents, plasmids, whether it's stored in liquid nitrogen or maybe minus 80 Celsius fridge. I don't know if everyone can see clearly, but Marcus add a lot of details to each inventory item, right? So there's a name, but also, how much vials is left, the general comments about the stock, the inventory item, how to handle the inventory item, instructions, and also date that's frozen, when is it added, who added it, and there's the item ID. What's also interesting is that in Sino system, and it depends on what you use, but in Sino system, you can actually use our smart annotation to refer back to that particular reagent. And what will happen is that it will pop up and it will show the unique ID of this particular inventory item. When is it added? The basic information, storage location, and whatnot. And then it will also show you the experiments that refer to this particular, inventory item. Now, as I mentioned, we're talking about big principles, so you can, you can use other systems to kind of follow similar structure to help you track. But the most important thing is that whenever you are using an inventory item in your experiment, especially the ones that that's materials that can differ, quality to quality, make sure to include specific information. Make sure you can assign some sort of unique ID or have naming convention that can help you trace all the way back to exactly which vial or which stock or which lot of which reagent you are actually using when it comes to your experiments and protocol. Finally, this example is from Pneumaform. It's a company that handles the recombinant peptide and protein expression and whatnot. They handle this a little bit differently. So instead of using inventory management system, they actually handle this within Sino's workflow structure, so that they manage the columns that they run, different type of columns that's used. They attach the results with that, but they also make sure to include information for each column and then trace it back, so that they have a structure of tracing that information back. And that's how they set it up as well. And they, in a way, and then they also allow, because it's digital, it's easy to find. They can search for it for a particular chemical, and then they can trace it back. And this is very important when it comes to making sure things are traceable, especially if you're dealing with regulatory requirement or quality management. That information sometimes is necessary. And if so it's important to have that, tracking happening in whatever system you set up. All right, so that's my last example. Well, I'm going to go into the next key, which is audit and review inventory and lab notes regularly. So you want to make sure that your inventory information is up to date. If there are changes that happen, we talk about inventory management, things like locations or whatever, but also if there's any information, for example, how you handle something that has changed, make sure to update that and also have a note on when it's updated. You also want to be, referring, making sure that your lab notes, you're following, you can spot irregularity in your inventory tracking and documentation, and you cannot do that unless you audit or review those information regularly. And if anything is out of place, missing, for example, an experiment note is missing a unique ID for a region, make sure to include that, right? And then make sure that those, again, it's coming back to being able to trace that information back. This is also very good for reporting. You want to make sure that information is up to date. You can have reports available. If any other departments, sometimes your other departments are other labs or other teams that you work with, or even other administrative departments asking for that information, you will have that information available. Sometimes this audit review structure means that for small labs, to have someone in charge of the inventory management and data management. In larger companies with multiple labs or larger infrastructure, then you're talking about data governance and regulatory requirements. So that's something that you will pay attention to when it comes to audit and review information. Jack, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I just think, I see a lot of people that are taking on this sort of a initiative in the lab, and they think of keeping their notes and keeping their inventory as two separate issues. And I just think a big overarching theme of this discussion in general is that they're not two separate issues. If you're going to do one, you simply have to do the other if you want to have the best data integrity for your individual lab. That comes with access, like we've talked about. That comes with controlling the inventory and making sure that everything is kept up to date. That comes with linking that to your experimental usage. And of course, like you're touching on here, being able to have an audit log, an activity trail of everything that's taken place in an inventory. Otherwise, when change happens, and the hot button right now is change management, as we all know, in labs, you're going to lose track of things. And that's just becoming more and more unacceptable in every type of lab. So
Right. And Jack, you mentioned something that I totally forgot to mention is that you also need to make sure that you have access to those notes, right? So if
yes.
someone leaves and somehow you lose access, that becomes a major issue when you have to track back to that information. So
Look, yeah, it's true. I mean, you can do all sorts of workarounds for inventory management, but you need a system that's going to allow you to very finely and precisely assign access. And if your system doesn't do that, then you're really selling yourself short a little bit as far as inventory management goes.
very good point. Thank you, Jack.
Yep.
All right, our next point is automate whenever you can, whatever you can. There are a few reasons for automating. It could be about time saving. It could be about eliminating errors. We talk about audit review. If things are automated, then you don't need to, you still need to review the process, but you probably don't need to review individual pieces because you know how that information is derived. A third reason for automating is that once you automate that process, even if the person leaves, someone leaves, that process is still there. It's automated, it's still there, right? So even the person who set that up the automation leaves, that process remains. So when it comes to automation, you can be looking at automating the generation of unique ID, automating generation of barcode, automating report generation, consumption report generation. It could be automating other things as well, like syncing of data, data entry can be somehow automated from equipment and whatnot, for example. Another way to automate things, and it's kind of like not fully automated, but still helps, is to create template for processes that are repeatable, because at least there's a structure there. And again, if any change does happen, at least that structure remains. Another way to automate is to integrate inventory management with other existing lab data systems like EON and LIMS. So if you're using an inventory management system like Quartzy, for example, then making the connection, having an integration from that with your other data sources will be a good thing. So you can refer to each other very easily. Or you can find data management system like EON and LIMS that already have inventory management system. Sino being an example. Jack, what are there other examples of automation options that you can think of that we didn't cover?
Sure. I mean, every lab has its own specific needs, but at some point in time, we're going to want to push everything more towards a centralized location. And whether that be from a piece of equipment, or a plate reader, or another piece of software, you want to have that sort of mission control within your lab of everywhere that data is being pushed. And that's something that Synode is working on every day, is becoming more of that sort of centralized point for data. So when it comes to inventory, obviously this goes without saying. If we have something in our lab that's storing information, we want to make sure that information is backed up and within our notebooks as well. So yeah.
Perfect. So I have two examples here. One is like both are more company oriented. One is advanced cellular dynamics. So they use API to help automate inventory related lab tests. So they track their inventory inside, some of the inventory information inside SharePoint, which is what I use, and then they synchronize inventory items with Synode, which is where they maintain their client information and client data. And using this kind of API system, they are able to automate a lot of things that they do in the lab. And on the slide, there are some examples. So they are able to streamline it while maintaining this kind of secure client-specific inventory exports that they need to provide to their clients. So that's an example of kind of automating automating that process. Another example I have, and I admit I'm not a data engineer. I know I was talking to Dave, and Dave is wonderful, and I feel like this is really above my pay grade in some level. But Dave actually helped Fog Pharma put together this structure of how compound inventory is synchronized across different platforms, and then so that system, once that system in place, a lot of things are automated. That process is automated. You eliminate the errors. You eliminate the needs to really worry about issues or errors in documentation. Make sure you capture all the information you need, and that's part of the automation when it comes to a larger company or a more complex system, to use API as a way to automate. All right, so my final key point, which Jack already sort of mentioned, is back up everything. And you never know what something could happen. It could be natural disasters like the snow that's out there that somehow cause some kind of issues with data management or documentation. I remember there was one time I remember there was like a hurricane or something, and it kind of destroyed one of the research facility with years of data just lost, or materials lost. It could also be just simple turnover, right? Team members change, a simple turnover, and that information gap, that institutional knowledge, there's a gap in that knowledge. And regardless of what happens, back up everything. If something is lost, was documented at some point, but somehow got deleted later on by accident, whatever, keep a backup of everything, and you can always go back to it. And the related thought is that don't delete things, archive things. That's another thought. At least you have that information now you can retrieve later on. So that's another option as well. For some of the digital tools that you see, they will focus on archiving, because you never know when you're going to go back to that, right? So they will focus on archiving as a quick way of retrieving information. But also a lot of the tools will also support backup. So whatever you use to support documentation, make sure there is a backup mechanism in place. So those are the 5 keys, and I want to do a quick summary. This slide has a lot of things, basically. So if you need to do screen capture or anything, this is a slide to take a photo of the specifics. And but I want to offer one more pro tip, and this is actually something that I checked with our team, our customer success managers, and I was like, if there's one thing you're gonna ask, like, you're gonna tell your prospects or anybody else or anyone dealing with inventory management to do, like what would you hope that they have done by the time that they talk to us? And that is to have appropriate resources assigned to support inventory data management, and also have someone in the lab responsible for it. And the reason is that people always overlook this. They feel like a lot of time people feel like inventory tracking is simply, okay, I received something, I make a note of it, I run out of it, I order more. But really, it's a lot of keeping things updated, making sure the process is correct, making sure you can track back to all the relevant information, make sure that you don't lose that traceability and connections between what you do and also the inventory items you use. Now, so the tip that our team has is the pro tip is that making sure that you have appropriate resources assigned to support this, as well as having someone or a team in place to support this management of this information, so that we can make sure things are up to date. All right, so this is sort of like the first portion of the webinar. And if you have any questions about anything that we just described, please feel free to leave a question in the Q&A or include in the chat. Now, we're gonna go to a next part, which is how does using something like electronic lab notebook help you facilitate inventory management and data traceability. And I think Jack is going to take over this portion, so I'm going to start to share. I know that in our email, we also encourage people to sign up for free sign-on. If you have access to sign-on, this is a great time to sort of log in. Sign-on free has a bit limited functionality. There is only one inventory. Our premium plan says, unlimited inventory. So Jack is gonna do the walkthrough from a premium plan, but the free plan has the inventory with very similar, most of the functionalities anyway. So if you log in right now, you can do the walkthrough with us together as well. So Jack, you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Teresa. So again, hi, everybody. I'm Jack. So essentially, I'm going to walk through some of the key functionalities within SignOut that correlate to what Teresa was talking about. So I've gone ahead and logged into SignOut here. Now, this is a premium instance. As she mentioned, you are welcome to have a free account where you can use many of the same functionalities I'm about to show you. So within SignOut, we have our inventory section here. When I go to my inventories, I'll see the list of them all here. Now with the free account, you'll only have one inventory to set up, which is fine because you can add as many items as you want into any SignOut inventory. It's worth noting, however, that with the premium version of SignOut, that is any paid plan, you have an unlimited number of inventories that you're going to be able to set up within the system. So to start, I just want us to all take a look at the inventory list. We get a feel for, animals, equipment, freezers, lab equipment, plasmids, solvents. So really you can set up an inventory for anything within SignOut. I always joke that if you wanted to set up an inventory for your pantry at home, you could, to keep track of your groceries. So if we go into an inventory now, you'll see that they can all essentially be customized. And how do we do that? Well, we manipulate these columns across the top to set up our SignOut inventory. So in my testing reagents and materials inventory, I have columns like, of course, the name, who added the item, the batch number for the item, its expiration date, and so on. But these columns can contain whatever information we want within the inventory. How do we do that? We just simply click this Manage Columns button. And within the SignOut inventory, I see all of my current columns and I can add my own. So let's say I wanted to add a column, and let's say I wanted to add a C of A column into my inventory so I can store those files within the inventory itself. I can just come here to File, and then I'd be able to save that column and add those files directly into the inventory. We also have text, number, drop-down, checklist, and dates and times status as well for equipment. So we've never run into anybody that, there's not a type of column for what their need is. And this really goes back to a lot of what Teresa was talking about, right? We need our inventories to be flexible. We need them to correlate directly to what we're doing in the lab. And SignOut sets you up really well for that with this ability to customize the inventory columns. Okay, so if you're working along with me, maybe now you have some columns set up. So what's great within SignOut is many of you, as you said on the poll, are already using some type of spreadsheet to keep track of your inventory in the lab. Well, with the import button in SignOut, I can simply click upload and I'd be able to put in a CSV file or any Excel spreadsheet. And as long as they match the columns in the Excel and the columns in SignOut, that inventory spreadsheet will populate directly into SignOut for me. So just think about how much time you'd be saving. And then just like that, with a few clicks, you'd have all of your inventory information within your electronic lab notebook. Going hand in hand with that, if I go through and check off a few items, you'll see that down here I have an export option. So many times in the lab, we want to be able to report on our inventory usage. Again, something Teresa talked about. We want to be able to report on that information, audit that information, send each other essentials about that information. So at any time, I can go here and export either a consumption report or just a report on the items. Maybe I want to say we've used this much of this reagent this month, or we need to reorder this, or something like that. And SignOut's going to give the ability to pull that out into an Excel at any time. So going down the list here, let's look at some of these columns. The first one I want to point out is item ID. So another thing Teresa talked about was keeping everything unique. I cannot stress this one enough. We're really not going to have any benefit of doing inventory management if everything isn't unique. And SignOut goes ahead and handles that for us by having an item ID automatically generated when we put it into the system. So we have an item ID here that's going to be unique for every item we put within the inventory. We have the item here, and if I click on this hyperlink, it'll pull up the item ID along with all of the other information relevant that I have stored within these columns that we were just looking at. So I can scroll through and see the expiration date and sort of this nice little inventory cheat sheet of everything about this lysate here. Scrolling down, you'll see that we even have the ability to generate QR codes. Every item has a QR code assigned to it upon entry into the system. We can print labels corresponding to that QR code using our integration with barcode scanners and labelers. So what does that mean? That means when I'm in the lab, I can add that even extra layer of inventory management. I can assign barcodes to my samples, to my equipment. Who doesn't want to be in the lab and just be able to scan something so that you know exactly what it is you're handling? When you scan that item, this information will appear so that you'll know, okay, wonderful. I know I'm handling IT 49859. So we're all on the same page. The next thing I want to touch on is traceability. So what I see a lot of in the industry right now is people that think, well, I just need a software to keep track of my notes, but they have heavy inventory consumption. As I've said, if these two aren't linked, if your ELN does not come with some sort of inventory linkage capability, you're really not doing yourself properly when it comes to managing your inventory and managing your electronic notebook. These are one and the same thing. So here on the assigned column, if I click here, I see everywhere that an item is assigned. So let's open up the qPCR where this lysate is being used. And I see the notebook entry. So wonderful, I can see when this notebook entry is due, when this task is due. I can see any notes associated with it. And I can see all of the other assigned items. I can scroll down and see the protocol where it's being used. What's nice about this is, Teresa sort of touched on this, within comments, you have smart annotations within SignOut. So if I hit the pound key, come over here to inventories, I see all of my different inventories. And maybe I want to sort of tag an inventory to let people know that I'm using that item. So now I'm going to leave a tag of sample 1 here. So everybody will be aware, Jack's letting them know I'm using sample 1 on this step of my protocol. So that adds, again, another layer of sort of this web that we're growing of just making sure everything is auditable and researchable within SignOut.
Jack, so that smart annotation is, you can use smart annotation within SignOut directly, right? Like as in protocols, experiments, and tasks and whatnot.
That's correct. So any text field within SignOut, I just type the pound key and I can create a smart annotation. And just to say, it's not just for inventory items. It could even be for other projects or experiments if you want to reference those for your colleagues as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now let's touch on traceability a little bit because as we've all heard, that's a huge point of emphasis here as well. So if I go to the activity, SignOut is automatically on the back end tracking every activity we do in the lab. So as you see here, Jack Lynch's, that's my user ID. I commented on that protocol step just now, and you can see that activity is having taken place. I did that. So no matter what you do in SignOut, we're keeping track of that. That's always going to be recorded. It never goes away. We always can know where that was. And sort of Teresa's point about backup, wouldn't it be great if the system you're using for this is already backing it all up for you? Well, that's the case with Synode. So you don't even really have to worry too much about those natural disasters and things if you're with Synode, because we're doing routine backups ourselves. So all of this information is already going to have the highest level of integrity. And as she mentioned as well, we're pursuing the FedRAMP certification, which will make us the only ELN with that level of compliance. So just a couple other little things here, and then maybe we can get into some Q&A. So I'm back into my inventory here. I just want to talk about a few other things. So one of the premium add-ons we have with Synode is stock management. So this is something I dreamed of when I worked in the lab in college. So we have 25 milliliters of a lysate stock solution here. Let's say I was going to consume 5 milliliters within a experiment. So when I consume that 5 milliliters with this add-on, essentially what would happen is that this would automatically update to 20 milliliters. Signout would deduct those 5 milliliters for me automatically from the inventory. I don't have to then remember to go update the inventory myself. Even better, maybe, is that we can create low stock reminders. So I'll be updated and sort of pinged by the system to say, at 35 milliliters, Jack, you need to go reorder this lysate stock. So again, taking something else that I don't have to have crammed into my brain and letting my software handle that for me. And lastly, there's comments. So like we've talked about with annotating and collaborating and everything, that's available within the stock management add-on as well. Maybe my last note is going to be about change management. So for any of you in any type of lab where there's turnover, which is every lab everywhere, you're going to want to be able to make sure that you control access, that you're not going to lose data and that other people aren't going to maintain access to data that they don't need access to. Well, Signout makes that really easy. We can invite members as simply as clicking this big blue button and entering in their emails. We can set up a role for those users within Signout. So depending on their role, they'll be able to do or not do certain things, like even creating inventories is assigned to specific roles within Signout. Maybe certain members of the lab don't need to be responsible for creating the inventories. As Teresa said, usually we find just 1 or 2 people having that capability is sufficient. So then we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen.
And that organization, there are more than just 2 roles pings can have,
Absolutely.
right?
So
There
this
are
is
like
this.
technicians, I believe this is just
Mhm.
the 2 of them here.
Yep, you beat me to my next point. So that's just at the organization level. So we also have projects roles as well. And there's really roles and permissions all throughout Synode that we unfortunately don't have enough time to cover all of them today. But just so you know, even when you're in a project, we're able to control access for who is what role within Synode. So if you see here, this is what you're referencing, Teresa. We have owner, user,
Ah, I see,
technician,
yep.
and viewer. So we're able to go through and say, this person just needs to be a viewer on this project, or maybe they just need to be a technician. So this is, again, how we're controlling access. And this is just something you're not going to be able to do with a piece of paper or with Google Drive or things like that. Not to the level of specificity that Synode is going to be able to give you. But Teresa, was there any other maybe question that you're seeing in the chat or anything else that you
Yeah,
over
so we
here?
can go into the Q&A, but maybe stay here just in case because I think there
Sure.
might be related questions. So one of the question that came up was someone someone was asking about Rawan was asking about, can we customize Sino inventory to give alerts to calibrate equipment? Can we use it to book equipment or instruments by different lab members and allow other members to see this particular instrument is booked? And I believe it's doable because I remember seeing one of our CS team talking about this, our team members talk about this before.
Yeah, sure. So absolutely. First of all, to the first point of your question, yes, absolutely. We can set up these reminders that you see within the inventory, these red dots. You also can use the stock management for the same thing. So these are going to be reminders letting you know to calibrate or to do maintenance on a piece of equipment. And I like to point out when people ask this question that Synode is much more than an electronic lab notebook. It really is at the same time a task management system. So if I go to my dashboard, you'll see here I have all of my current tasks. So what I've seen other labs do is set up sort of an equipment maintenance and calibration project. So then those will have recurring tasks pop up for people here. either on their calendar or in their current task window. So they can go through and see, oh, okay, on the 24th, maybe I have a calibration due, so I need to go ahead and get ready to do that next week. So you have a lot of different tools at your disposal with SignOut to be able to set reminders for calibrating and maintaining equipment. As for
Perfect.
the
Thank you.
question
Oh, sorry,
about
go
yeah,
ahead.
sure, absolutely. As for the question about booking equipment, so SignOut is still absolutely, beefing up its inventory section. So these are things that are going to be coming this year and next. But for right now, we do have some workarounds. You're able to set up sort of an equipment scheduling spreadsheet essentially within SignOut. You see here we have the times, and over on the y-axis we have the items. So we can put in people's names and maybe a cute little emoji to be able to book an item at that specific time. And we can update this each week using that easy integration with Excel. If you just want to fill it out with an Excel as you go and then pop it in each week so that we know who is going to be using what when. But maybe that's a good time to also talk about some upcoming features with SignOut's inventories. So we're going to see some really big updates this year that we're very excited about. So the first one I want to touch on is Quartzy. We're going to be integrating with Quartzy. So for anybody that has used or is using Quartzy, that's going to be a nice clean integration to where you can use both in line with each other and they can be talking to each other much more easily, which as you saw today, is a really growing hot button topic in inventory data management with ELNs. We're going to see some other little things, like things like this, equipment management. We're going to see things like parent-child relationships with items, and even sort of a better location management within SignOut. So we've identified inventories essentially just to say as something that the stronger we can make it, the more empowerment we're going to give to scientists. And so that's a huge focus for us in 2024.
I want to touch on the parent-child relations. I know we have two more questions in the chat.
Please go
We'll
ahead.
get to you very quickly, but I want to touch on a little bit on the parent-child relationship
Mhm.
because that can really help people handle, multiple samples from an individual or aliquots of antibodies or anything else, reagents, and that can ensure that you again see that traceability, right? Like you can trace
Absolutely.
those aliquots or samples or stock that you make back to the main original stock and where it came from. So that's coming on next week, actually, I believe.
Yep.
So very excited about that change. One other question. I want to answer the chat question. I have one question from the submission form. So are there templates for inventories?
Okay. So I'm not sure exactly what is meant by templates here, but Signout doesn't really, there's no really template that you get with Signout for the inventory. Really, we're looking to work with you with our customer success team to set up those inventories and customize them because everybody's is so unique. If you have anything in Excel, like I showed, it's really easy to just set up those columns and then you can just pop that Excel in. But if there's any clarification on what kind of template you'd be looking for, that's something again that the customer success team could help you with, and maybe just to explain exactly what that means when I say customer success. So
Sure.
that's the team.
I
Sorry.
also want to mention one more thing. We have quite a few use cases online as well. Those will
Yeah.
also have examples of how the columns are set up. But yes, sorry, please go ahead and share more
Yeah.
because we're really proud of our customer success team.
Yeah, I mean, industry leading support is generally what's said about SignOut. And so what happens when you subscribe is you're assigned a customer success manager, and this person helps you and guides you through the usage of all of SignOut, and in particular the inventories if you need it. So these people will help you customize the inventories to your specific needs. They'll help you with importing the Excels in. They'll help you with all sorts of things, linking those to your experiments. So that comes free of charge with the premium plans. So we're really proud of that team. They do amazing work, and they even probably could provide you with certain little templates and use cases that you could use when it comes to setting up your inventories in SignOut.
Great, thank you, Jack. And the next question is there a time limit of how long you can use the free version of Sino? How much is the premium version? I think that's a question a lot of people ask. In terms of complexity of features included for various premium versions.
Sure. Okay. So first of all, there is no limit on how long you can use the free account. You use it as long as you want. And I'll even mention if you wanted to migrate that data into a premium SignOut instance later, we can help you with that. As far as the pricing of SignOut, I don't want to give a non-answer, but it is heavily dependent on several different factors when it comes to the pricing. It can be as low as a few $100s up to much greater than that. So if you're curious about learning more, if you're serious about maybe setting up a sign up premium instance, please, you can send me an email to jack@signout.net. Or at the end of this call, we're going to show our meeting links and you can schedule time with me directly to discuss that. I'll be happy to help you. I just need a little bit more information so that I can know the best plan for you, and then I can set you up with a quote and any other information that you need.
Yeah, our free version of Sino is currently like we haven't put a timeline on it. I also want to be a bit cautious because I know other software has gotten trouble into that, but it's definitely at least our plan right now is like it's free. It's not we're not gonna put a stop to it at any point. That's our current plan. And another thing I
Correct.
want to mention is also that you we anyone can like sign up for 14 day free trial if you meet
That's
with
right.
us, and it's free. You might as well try it. So so it's a free trial, no commitment. We're not even asking you for critical information, which I know some of the free trials would do that. So so that's something that to keep in mind. There's one more question from the previous foreign submission, and I think the question was, can Sino handle case report forms in the inventory system? And I want to quickly mention that just in case the person is attending the webinar today, Sino doesn't have the form integration just yet. There are ways that we can handle simple forms within inventory using our editable item card. But if there is a specific need for case report forms, like please contact us because we would love to know what the needs are, and then we can look at working with our product team to see how we can help with that. Okay, so that's just one quick question that I got from the registration form. So I want to make sure that I answer that. There's one more question. Is Sino a web app or a local app? Where is the information located?
Excellent question. Right. So SideNote does have a mobile app and it is also a browser-based app. Like you see here, I'm in mydemo.sidenote.net in my browser. It can be accessed via any browser on any device. As far as where your information is stored, well, when you subscribe to Premium SideNote, we actually let you choose which server globally you would like to have your data stored in. We have them all over globally in the States, in the EU, in Asia, and different places. So wherever it makes the most sense for you to have your data housed, absolutely, we are more than willing to get that set up for you.
Perfect. I also want to mention that because the information is set up so that we can back it up regularly. I believe the backup is actually in a separate location from the server, if I
Correct.
remember correctly. So even if anything happened to that server, the backup is in another server, and we want to make sure there's multiple geographical areas so where the servers are located to make sure that you will not lose your data, and that's something that we
Yeah.
take very seriously about.
And maybe that's a good time to just mention something else. If you want to follow up with us after this webinar, we have a data protection white paper that we've published. If you'd like to read through some of the ways we ensure your data is protected and encrypted at all times and backed up at all times, we'd be happy to send that your way.
Perfect. Hopefully this webinar gave enough information for you to take back to your team and also help you in choosing a tool or thinking about what tool you would choose when it comes to inventory data management. And we hope to see you next time in a future webinar.